Hello and welcome back for another timeless video. Today we will be playing this Rescaminator best of one deck. The premise of the deck is to use our Entomb to put one of our large creatures into the graveyard, and then we can reanimate it back to the battlefield. And to back this up, we're playing 4 copies of Thoughtseize as early disruption to our opponent. This can often completely take out a combo deck, but it can also protect our own combo. We also have 2 copies of Mana Drain as a counter spell that also adds mana the following main phase. 4 copies of Psychic Frog, which can act as a semi-fair way of winning the game if our opponent is able to shut down our reanimate strategy, or if we just don't have it in hand. Psychic Frog is a tremendously powerful creature. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, we can draw a card, so it grants card advantage. Then by discarding a card, we can put a counter on the creature, so if we have some dead cards that either are not useful against what our opponent's doing, or if they've played out a Chalice of the Void and we have some dead cards, or just need to pump our creature, this is a great ability. Usually this will mean that Psychic Frog is immune to red removal, such as Fury. And then the last ability on Psychic Frog lets us exile 3 cards from our graveyard, and it will give Psychic Frog flying. So this can be some evasion to fly over our creatures. It can also be used to prevent our opponent from exiling specific cards from our graveyard, say from a surgical extraction. In addition to Psychic Frog, we have 4 copies of Force of Negation. In this current meta, having a free counter spell to combat things like Oops All spells is critical. Then as one of our flex slots, we decided to run Ashiok Dream Render, which will shut down our opponent's fetch lands. It's also some passive graveyard hate for past the turn lines, and we can also mill ourselves to put some creatures into our graveyard if we already have Reanimate in hand. We have 4 copies of Grief, which is where the scam part of the title comes from. When you pitch cast Grief, you can protect your combo. You can also reanimate Grief to take a second card from your opponent's hand. So overall, this is a very powerful interaction in this deck. And then for fast mana, we have 4 copies of Chrome Mox, allowing us to pitch any of our non-artifact cards to it to ramp. And we have 4 copies of Dark Ritual, which can allow us to combo off on turn 1. For our reanimation targets, we're running 4 copies of Troll of Khazad-dûm, which we can swamp cycle to get into our graveyard and then reanimate the following turn. Then we have Jin Cadaxius, Progress Tyrant, which we can use to essentially shut down our opponent's artifact, instant, and sorcery spells. And then if we cast one such as Thoughtseize, it will get doubled as well. Atraxa as a powerful creature where we can refuel our hand, and then it will provide a quick clock with flying, lifelink, vigilance, and death touch. Iona, Shield of Emeria, is able to completely lock out most decks in the format, and if it can't lock them out, we can always shut down some of their key colors so that they can't cast those cards. And Valgavoth, Terror Eater, which will shut down our opponent's graveyard and could potentially also provide us card advantage, as any card that would normally go into their graveyard gets exiled instead. And then during our turn, we're able to cast those cards by paying life equal to their mana value rather than their mana cost. For the lands, we have a single copy of Island in case we come up against any Blood Moon strategy. And then we have Darkslick Shores as a early dual land that we don't have to pay life for. 1 copy of Undercity Soars for some selection, and then 4 copies of Watery Grave, which will be our target for Polluted Delta and Troll of Khazad-dûm. Before we jump into the gameplay, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe the video. It really helps the channel. And without further ado, let's jump into the games. This hand has a turn 1 Ashiok. Then we'll have to wait until turn 2 to try and reanimate. If we do mill over something, we'll give it a try. We do have Force of Negation backup. We'll have to get a Watery Grave. here we will mill ourselves. We hit 2 trolls. Ideally, we'd like to get one of our larger creatures, but a troll might have to do, depending on what our opponent is playing. That fetch land won't work. Our opponent's going to find that out the hard way. Based on that, we might take another turn off, but we hit Atraxa and also Jin Cataxius, so we'll take Atraxa first. Refuel. Here I think we get our Reanimate and Entomb. Yep, we'd be able to grief our opponent, see what we need to put in our graveyard. So that one was pretty much over. Good game. This hand can play out a turn 1 Psychic Frog, followed up by a turn 2 Psychic Frog. It's not really doing anything unfair. We can give it a try. Usually in Timeless you do want to shoot for a deck that's doing something a little bit more busted. Here I think we'll imprint the Dark Ritual. We can always cycle the Troll next turn to get it into the graveyard, or discard it with Psychic Frog. Just a Flooded Strand from our opponent, and then they pass the turn. We'll try to hit first. We'll hold on to Troll. Maybe we'll still cycle it. First we'll take a look at what our opponent's doing before playing out the second Psychic Frog. Alright, so they're on a Show and Tell deck. Waterlogged Teachings can search for another Show and Tell, but I think that still has to be the take here. And then we'll shock in our Water Grave and play out another Psychic Frog. We will need to find another blue card to pitch to Force of Negation if we want to be able to counter their Show and Tell when they cast it. And with double stock up in hand, it's likely that they find it pretty quickly. They might have found it already. They did not. It was just a ponder. So they're prioritizing stock up over the Waterlogged Teachings, which would allow them to tutor up the missing combo piece. Even without Omniscience, Emrakul would pretty much win the game on the spot. This time I think we will grow one of our Psychic Frogs. We can hardcast Force of Negation. And we will reanimate the Troll. That was a good top deck. We almost have lethal on board. Demonic Tutor is fine. Ancient Tomb might have been the grab. And we will counter the Show and Tell, or attempt to counter the Show and Tell. We still have another Force of Negation for next turn. Down to 2. We did miss lethal there. Got a little overexcited and forgot to do the math on that attack. We still have double force though, so I feel pretty confident about our position. Alright, our opponent concedes. Unpunished. This hand would allow us to Troll Cycle and Reanimate on turn 2, and we can use Thoughtseize on turn 1 to check our opponent's hand. we're going to pay the iron price here. 1 damage for fetching, 2 damage for Watery Grave, 2 damage for Thoughtseize. Ouch. So this looks like a creativity deck. Our opponent can recur lands out of the graveyard with that Wrenn and 6. We'll take the Spell Pierce. Then here we can cycle our Troll. We will go get a Watery Grave so that we can play Ashiok. And then we'll reanimate the Troll. They play out the Wrenn and 6. We will be able to use Ashiok to keep their graveyard in check, but new fetch lands obviously will get some value. Ashiok will prevent that fetch land from being useful. Got rid of 2 of their Atraxa. And we don't care about Wrenn and 6 dealing 1 damage to any target. So we will just pressure face. Oops. Our opponent might not be familiar with Ashiok's abilities. This also, I believe, shuts down their tutor. And our opponent concedes. This hand can hard cast Grief on turn 1 by using both Dark Rituals. Alternatively, we can play out Ashiok. We are able to grief our opponent still. I'll give it a try. If we don't find our second mana, we could be in a lot of trouble, but Psychic Frog is able to recuperate from going pretty deep. So we'll grief our opponent first so that we see what's going on, and then Ashiok can clip whatever we take from their hand out of their graveyard as well. Entomb, Life Death, they are on what appears to be an Oops All Spell variant. We'll take their only land. Then we will shock in Watery Grave, play out our Ashiok. Alright, let's see how our opponent recovers from this. If we get our land before they do, then Psychic Frog will run away with the game. Here, unfortunately, they will be able to... They took the wrong card there. So the reason you want to take Psychic Frog is because then you have a reanimation target. And with that reanimation target, you'll be able to deal damage to my Planeswalker, get your tutoring back, get your graveyard back, etc. We might as well keep milling them. They're likely to entomb at the end of our turn. Entomb doesn't work with Ashiok. And they reanimate our Grief. And then concede. So I don't know if this game's over yet. Our opponent can take out Ashiok with Grief, and then we're both pretty low on life totals. Here we have a Grief and a Reanimate. Unfortunately, we're up against a Lurrus deck, which usually indicates that they're not going to have any powerful creatures that we can take and reanimate their creature. If they're the energy deck, double griefing them might not be enough either. I think we have to take a mulligan. Turn 1, we can cycle Troll. Turn 2, hold up Mana Drain, or play Psychic Frog. Alternatively, we can Thought Seize on turn 1. We can also reanimate our Traxa. I think we'll keep this and get rid of the Thought Seize. Turn 1 will hold up Cycle for our second land. Soul Guide Lantern will shut down our reanimation. We're still going to cycle the Troll. We'll need the second land for Psychic Frog. Dark Slick Shores means we don't need to take damage here. And if Frog survives, it will start to spiral out of opponent with a Tameo and a fetch land. Let's start off with a Thoughtseize, see what our opponent's working with. Treasure Cruise, Strip Mine, and a bunch of lands, so their hand is pretty terrible. We'll attack in with Psychic Frog. They'll block. We'll discard Reanimate. And we will discard our Traxa. We don't care if they exile them with Soul Guide Lantern. That means that they won't be drawing a card with it. And we'll hold up Mana Drain. Another land, so our opponent is flooding quite heavily here. We're also running low on resources, although we do have a Psychic Frog resolved. They move Lurrus to hand. So even if they strip mine us next turn, we can still hold up Mana Drain. And now we also have a hard cast Force of Negation as well. We hit blue. If our opponent doesn't switch phases, then we can use that mana still. If they try Lurrus, we'll counter that. And then we will Surveil at the end of turn. Reanimate is good. This will force them to pop the Soul Guide Lantern. That was a bit preemptive. Now if we draw a creature, we can discard it to Psychic Frog and reanimate it. And that's exactly what we'll do here. We'll get a Ordery Grave. And here I think we actually hold up Force of Negation. And then next turn we can reanimate around Permission. They exile what might be a Doomscar. We'll Entomb Iona. And then this I think we name White with if it resolves. Looks like they might have drawn into a counter spell, and they did. So we'll attack with Psychic Frog. Chromox, unfortunately, if that is a Doomscar, we will lose the Psychic Frog, and then we don't really have anything going on here. Shock in, so they might have more counter spells in hand now. Starheim is fine. It will slow us down a bit, but it will not take us out. And here, I think we need to hold back a blocker and Force of Negation at the same time, so we won't play out the Ashiok. Our opponent has enough lands in play that shutting down their fetches is not important. We've already countered their Lurrus. If they attack, we'll definitely jump our Frog and block. They hold back. Jin Cataxius is a good reanimation target if we can get it into play. We can also pitch cast it. So here I think we're going to play our Ashiok out. See if our opponent wants to counter. They let it resolve, and we will mill them. We've already seen that they have some graveyard synergies with the, I believe it was Treasure Cruise. So Wan Shi Tong is fine. We can block that one as well. There goes another strip mine. So our opponent is getting to the point where if they start swinging out, we could be in a bit of trouble. They do decide to attack Ashiok. We'll block first. We'll exile the land, the reanimate, and the entomb. Then we will block one of the non-legendary creatures. And we'll discard Chromox to grow our Frog.
This is difficult to digest.
And our opponent has yet another strip mine. That is the last one. So they've drawn all of them in the top 23 cards of their deck. But we got to reanimate. If this resolves, I believe we will win the game. All of the strip mines that our opponent drew have come in handy, as that shuts down our reanimate. We don't have enough to pay for it. Unfortunate. Do we cast Force of Negation here? I think we let this resolve. We're looking to dodge white removal, and we can always use the force on the removal spell when they cast it. There is a prismatic ending. We will counter that, or attempt to counter it. Do they have a second removal spell? They do not, but Polluted Delta will be able to clear the top of their deck. Thoughtseize is a dead card. Notably, if we do get up to 8 counters on Psychic Frog, we would be able to attack past their blockers. So we will hold some of these cards in hand. Our opponent did redraw the cards that they put on top with Brainstorm instead of fetching them away, which means they are likely counter spells. Could be a Treasure Cruise. And just a Dig Through Time instead. And they do leave up 2 mana, which could be for counter, could be for removal. Looks like they found the removal. So now we are in a lot of trouble. Force of Negation won't do it here. I think this one has slipped away. Let's see what else they grabbed. It is board wipe and a mana drain. Good game. Here we have a turn 1 Grief into Reanimate. Our opponent is on the play, so they have the opportunity to disrupt us. They have not revealed a companion. We'll give it a try. Hopefully they have something juicy in their hand. Otherwise, we can always just reanimate our own grief. So here we'll pitch one of the Ashiok. Force Spike is not online yet. So they are on a token generator deck. I think Wandering Emperor is actually our take here. And then we'll reanimate the grief. And here we can take out the Soul Warden, which will be their life gain. We can play around Force Spike if we know it's in their hand. Troll is good. We can cycle this for a Watery Grave. And then we can use Polluted Delta to fetch a Surveil land. We still have Force of Negation up around the Force Spike. And I realized we did forget an attack last turn. Don't need more lands. Here we'll hit for 3. And then let our opponent use their Force Spike. They know that we know they have it, so they might not counter this thinking it's a trap. We don't care if they do, since we have a backup. Delaney, we can't counter that. Mana Drain is 1 turn too late. Wait for 2, and then pass the turn holding up Mana Drain. Hit for 3. This will end up creating a lot of life gain with the enchantments they have in hand. Spell Pierce will not work here. We'll counter the Spell Pierce, and I think we pitched the Atraxa. Psychic Frog is the only way to get it into our graveyard from our hand, and we do not currently have a reanimate. We will play out the Psychic Frog here. It's much better than Ashiok. Our opponent already has their mana under them, and they don't appear to have any tutors. Here we will exile some lands and the Ashiok to give our Frog flying. And then I think we'll just pump it. I don't think there's any need to hold on to these cards at this point in the game. We'll hit for 6, and our opponent is dead on board. They need to come up with another creature so that they can block grief. And we'll just take the card that we know about with Thoughtseize. Ocelot Pride, that is a good blocker. But our frog can just fly over it. Do we offer the trade with grief? I think we do. So here, let's give our frog flying. We'll leave the creatures in graveyard. And if they want to block with Ocelot Pride, well, they have to block with Ocelot Pride. So we will take out both creatures here. We draw Chrome Mox. That's something we don't mind discarding to Psychic Frog. And our opponent concedes. Good game. This hand has a turn 1 Ashiok. We could also grief our opponent. Turn 2 we could entomb something. It does only have 1 land. I think Ashiok is powerful enough that we might give this a try. Now the question is here, do we hold on to Entomb or do we use it to grief? I think that entirely depends how many mulligans our opponent takes. More than 1 and we're definitely going to grief. And then actually we can play out Ashiok first and mill our opponent and and use that to inform our decision whether or not they're on a combo deck. Pause. Our opponent could have surgical extraction. They could have force of negation. That resolves. Let's see what we have. So land strategy. We're not going to have a ton of interaction for this deck. We will grief them though. If they kept a Dark Ritual hand, we want to be able to snipe that. So they were digging for the Vampire Hexmage. They don't have any colored mana. Right now, grief is their only play, so we'll take that. And then we'll pass the turn. Our opponent can surgical something, but at the moment we don't have anything useful in our graveyard. Troll is another good top deck. Our opponent also has a reanimation aspect to their deck. Here we'll grab the Undercity Soars. We don't have a play anyway, so we'll set up for next turn. And then in the face of face-up surgical extraction, I don't think we'll take the Entomb. Mill our opponent some more. And we'll hold up Mana Drain. Now we have double grief. I don't think we saw a Bowmasters yet, so we'll risk going down to 1 for our Ashiok, and I think we stop there. Our opponent is still missing black mana. Seeing their deck, I would think that they might have wanted to take in another mulligan and gone down to 5 cards. We don't mind if they surgical. We don't have any duplicates in our hand at the moment. So they take the troll, we'll let that go. Now they'll see that we have Mana Drain. There's still sequences of cards that our opponent can draw to get out of this. Double Thoughtseize, Necropotence, and Hexmage. I think we will take the Hexmage just in case they top deck an Herborg. And now we have our threat in play. Dark Depths, so now they only need 1 more mana, and they'll be able to create Merit Lage and win the game. We will discard our Iona, and we will discard our Watery Grave. And I think we also discard our Mana Drain. We're going to try and win as soon as possible. Pretty much anything our opponent top decks will win the game for them. Our deck doesn't have any way to answer a resolved Merit Lage. We don't have any bounce effects. But our opponent concedes. I don't think this one was over yet. If they top deck a land next turn, we're only doing 5 damage to them here. They could easily win. This hand has a turn 1 Entomb Reanimate, and I can also check my opponent's hand for interaction. We will have to pitch our troll to Chromox, and then hope our Dark Ritual is not countered. That resolved pretty quickly. Our opponent on a fair deck. We will just block them out completely. It doesn't really matter what we take here, because Iona will be the grab. And then we'll name green. Should lock our opponent out. Good game. That does it for today's gameplay. I can't give this deck a very high rating in Timeless Best of One compared to other things you can be doing in the format. It does feel a bit weak. We didn't really have the ability to use Force of Negation to counter our opponent's strategies. The blue count in this deck is probably a bit too low to consistently pitch cast it, and with only 4 Force of Negation in the deck, it's not a reliable strategy to stop what your opponent is doing. Ultimately, I found myself wanting to dig for hands where I could Dark Ritual, Entomb, and Reanimate in the same turn, which, if you're going to be doing that, you might as well be playing a dedicated reanimation strategy. Without more free pitch interaction like Force of Will, then Best of One, I think, is going to continue to be just absolutely busted turn 1 combo decks. And so really you're kind of pigeonholed into playing one of those if you want to play the format at this moment. We had a couple games where we were able to play out a turn 1 Ashiok, and the search ability ended up messing up our opponent's game plan. We also were able to play Iona and get a few wins by locking out our opponent's colors. Psychic Frog was okay in some of the grindier matches. Mana Drain wasn't quite as strong as it could be in different shells where you really could leverage the additional mana. Overall, I give it a C, C-. It definitely could be improved upon, either by making it more into a Dimir tempo strategy. If you did that, you'd probably want to shave the Troll of Khazad-dûm, definitely the Jin Kataxis, and potentially even the Atraxa and the Valgavoth, and just keep Iona and Grafe as your reanimation targets, bringing in cards like Barrack or Orcish Bowmasters, additional discard, and potentially some other counter spells as well. And if you're not trying for the turn 1 win, then Dark Ritual is another card that can be turned into more interaction. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content.